Hi, and welcome to Pushbox Banter. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Craig.
Today, we're going to be talking about Suzuka.
Yes, Suzuka. Man, this is, one of the purest circuits is what some people call it. Some people call it like the pinnacle of motorsports with the Japanese Grand Prix, F1 Japanese Grand Prix being here in Suzuka this week. So I think it's a great track.
Yeah, you mentioned it's the only figure eight on the calendar, so that's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Lots of high-speed corners.
Mm-hmm. Lots of high-speed stuff, and because it was developed back in the 60s with Honda as just an original test track, it doesn't have like the big wide boundaries outside of the actual tarmac. So it's a little different. It's a little more technical on what's going on.
Very much a old school track. You've got grass and gravel.
Yeah. You got the grass and gravel, and you also have like, the elevation change about 40 meters or so.
Yeah, that's right.
The race. So you don't really notice it too much on when you're watching it, but it's there.
Old school tire walls as well.
Yes, that's true.
Some teams may be too familiar with those.
Yeah, we'll get into a little bit of that possibly.
Yeah, exactly.
Have to hang on for that. See what's coming around with that one. But so for today, we've got some different topics, right?
Leading into the weekend, there's lots of items that kind of left over, questions unanswered about Mercedes.
Yeah.
How does Russell come back from his shunt with Alonso in Australia? Right?
Yeah, and how does Hamilton come back after not finishing, having the engine issues, and just their whole season right now and the whole past couple of seasons? How do they keep progressing? How are they going to handle it?
Exactly.
It's an interesting to see. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about that and talking more about that.
Red Bull.
Yeah.
Reliability issues, are they fixed?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah. Which for them, that's pretty disastrous, really.
Disastrous for Verstappen for sure.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We're going to touch on some of the upgrades they've brought, and some of the other storylines from the weekend.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, because most of the teams, I think, were bringing upgrades, so that's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see how that impacts everything. I heard somebody make a comment about, with all of the upgrades that are put onto these cars, whatever car at the very beginning of the year that wins would be like last place by the end of the season because of the amount of upgrades. I don't know if that individual that spoke that he wasn't an actual F1 individual. I don't think that he's watching Verstappen and Red Bull, but maybe he is. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we know that Red Bull brought a few upgrades. Mm-hmm. We know they had some specific brake problems last week.
Yeah.
They did bring some circuit-specific brake upgrades this week, as well as some inlets on their side pods. Exactly.
I think they had something too with their mirrors. I know
that's right. They had a little sticky uppy bit that a little sticky uppy bit that.
I love this technical term that are. They develop a $2 million car, but they call it a sticky uppy bit.
Exactly. It's actually what one of the things that Sam Collins on Formula One TV uses. Sticky uppy bits and sticky outy bits.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I love Sam Collins. He's great.
Yeah.
For those of you that haven't seen him, he always has some like incredibly insightful things to say.
Definitely.
Yeah, he's really good.
He's really good. Aston Martin brought some upgrades. It looks like some Red Bull RB19 copy almost on the side pods with a little V going into their side, right? Ferrari brought some upgrades as well. Mm-hmm. They brought a new suspension, I think.
Nice.
Yeah. So we'll see how that works out for them.
Mm-hmm.
And then Williams bringing in some front end
whatever they could find,
wing, whatever they can come up with, and a little bit of time. Exactly.
Yeah. They've that's a challenge with them because of the wrecks that they've had. Like they'll bring in something an upgrade, and then it gets wrecked, and the shunt causes it to be gone, and so then they've got to use a backup, or they don't get the full feedback, so then they're having to spend more money on that. But
usually before even the start of the race, right? Pre-practice even.
It seems like it. It seems like there's a high probability for them
exactly
right now.
But Russell, do you feel as far as like his performance last week in his crash? How do you feel he did, or how do you feel he is coming into this weekend?
Well, I think coming into the weekend, I think there's a little bit of question marks about if he would be rattled some, but he's a high quality driver. Like him, not like him, whatever. He's good. So. Looking at the practice sessions, looking at the qualifying sessions, he did well. But one of the things with this track is that, and at this time frame, was the weather difference between the practice rounds and between the qualifying rounds, and then between race day. So you had some cooler temperatures on the first couple of days. You had some rain, and then race day comes around, and you've got nice warm tarmac. A beautiful day outside, beautiful sun. It's perfect for watching racing, perfect for being outside. It's like low 70s. I'm not going to convert that to Celsius right now, but the temperature of the tarmac was about 40 degrees Celsius, which I think is around 100 in Fahrenheit, or higher actually. So, yes. So you've got some different temperature things there. And now, why am I mentioning all of this with temperature? Is because during the week in the lead up, Mercedes kept saying, "Hey, we think we found out some more about our car."
And what did they find out?
Well, they found out a little bit about that their car runs well in cooler temperatures.
Yeah.
So, so at first I'm looking at the weekend and I'm thinking, about a week ago, last Sunday, they had, forecast for rain, and which would actually, maybe or maybe not with the slick conditions, but the cooler temperatures would favor them. So that's kind of an interesting thing to see. Well, how are these temperatures going to do? But they're on. One of the things that is important at this track is tire degradation as well.
Right.
So that's going to be a little bit of a theme that goes along. So.
Yeah, no, and it looks like there must have been cooler temperatures for the race than there were for qualifying, because he did qualify not very high. Mm-hmm. He actually qualified behind Hamilton. So and he ended up ahead of Hamilton at the end of the race, mm-hmm. right? So
I think the qualifying day, the temperature I think was a little bit cooler, but it always qualifying and how you perform throughout the whole race can vary a little bit.
That's true. But
and then we've got Hamilton with Mercedes. So Hamilton's kind of an interesting one too. His last time out, the engine's failing. This time, what's he going to do? And then also the question with Hamilton, because he is going to Ferrari next year. Yep. Russell's kind of the guy for Mercedes right now.
Right.
And so Hamilton's in a different position than what he's been in the past. Like in the past, he's been the man for years. I mean, the greatest of all time for years. And now he's having to take a little bit of a back seat. So it's interesting to see, like, as some of the race laps went on, he's driving well, but his car is only so good. It's not as good. It's not good enough to get him on the podium. Either he or Russell. And so there does come a point in the race where he's like asking, "Hey, it's almost like, almost somewhat sheepishly, almost not quite, but he's like, oh, do you guys want me to let Russell pass?"
He does. Like, he does say that.
It's not like, in the past he wouldn't be that way.
Right.
He was very much like, he's very much driven to win in all circumstances. All of those guys really are. So it's a little bit different to hear him say that. But at the end of the day, I think Russell's car was faster.
Yeah, Hamilton did say that he might have picked up some damage in the early part of the stint. Yeah, so he said, I think going towards like the second stint, mm-hmm. On his second pair of tires, that he had finally kind of picked up where he had lost in his first stint. So
Yeah.
who knows? But that's probably why he let him through so easily.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what about Red Bull and their reliability?
Red Bull and the reliability.
Yeah, so it looks like they kind of figured it out, right?
Yeah.
We didn't see any brake issues or anything like that.
No, I mean,
No.
It's race day.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing's going to stop Verstappen from winning.
Yeah.
Unless it's like, a mechanical.
Right.
He's pretty much going to figure a way.
Yeah, definitely.
At least that's what I like to say. But he's, he's amazing. And, you get him out there in a car and he's does amazing things with it. One amazing thing though is that he never wins driver of the day. I don't know. I haven't looked into this, but he practically he'll win all the races, but never driver of the day. Carlos Sainz last week, he won driver of the day and the race. So maybe Verstappen needs to step it up and do a little bit more than what he's doing. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how he's going to do that.
I think he's driver of the day for Penelope, because at the end of the race, I don't know if you heard this, but
No.
you could hear when they were they
It's
had the
very
national
sweet of you to
anthem.
notice that.
They had that national anthem. She's like, Maxie. So that was very sweet, very cute.
That was
Nice little moment.
Yeah.
It turns out every time she comes, something not great happens to him.
Oh, really?
So this time, it was fine.
Yeah.
So
Well, I was going to mention this a little bit later, but I'll go ahead now.
Yeah.
But in Suzuka, typically Suzuka is always held, in September.
yeah,
But they moved it up early this year. But I think 4 out of the last 5 winners have gone on to win the constructor championship. So, that's
Well, if it's-
possibly
yeah.
good for Max.
yeah. Well,
to win here.
He's on track.
Maybe he's done. He doesn't have to do
Yeah.
anything else for the rest of the year.
No, he's on track. He had a good,
Yeah.
especially this weekend. He had a good start twice, right?
Yeah, twice.
Even though it wasn't the best start, because I think Sergio reacted quicker on both starts, the start and the restart. He did pull away, and then obviously ended with like 12 seconds on top of Sergio. So he had a great race. I mean, I don't think we saw him once on the tele.
Yeah, I mean, the only time that they showed him was when he was in a pit stop.
Right.
And it was, I think the first pit stop, he goes in and he does his pit stop. They show him on the little side camera, but so he gets like, 2/3 of the screen or maybe 1/3 of the screen. And so he goes in, he gets his pit stop done. He comes back out and he's just barely in second place. And then he's, quickly overtakes Leclerc and gets back in first place. It seems like.
Yeah, it's a for sure thing when he's out there. He's just on his own, in his own little world.
I think so, man.
Yeah.
He said he was, felt really good with the car today. And
I feel that's been the story when he's finished, because obviously every time he finishes first. But it's always like, oh, I couldn't ask for anything better. Like everything worked well.
yes.
And there was some like, oh, is it, are they going to have reliability issues again or something like that? That just was like, that did not happen. Though he did it looked like his practices were a little closer to Perez, like he didn't pull away as much, but during the race, he looked good. And, it's nice to see, but
I mean, all the times in qualifying, they were stacked together.
Yeah.
I mean, it was obviously, he was in first, but
right.
But I mean, you're separating these drivers by
Hundredths of a
of a second.
Yeah.
And it's like all through 1 through 10, very,
Right,
very close.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those guys are really close, but in the course of a race, I mean,
Yeah.
Verstappen just, he gets out in front and there's no looking back.
Yeah, well, I mean, this the whole race was very much a story about tire strategy, right? Open field for the strategies. Like, what were these teams going to do? We talked a little bit about how abrasive the circuit is, and how there's lots of heavy on the downforce, heavy on lateral loads, stresses the tires heavily. And Pirelli mentioned it was probably going to be a 2 pit stop situation.
And they brought out the C3, C4, and C5 compound tires. So you've got the harder tires that are out there.
The harder tires, right? Yeah, and from the very beginning, it looks like everybody was somewhat on a different strategy. It was a little mixed. Like the top of the field had the mediums, except with exception for Alonso, starting on the softs, and then everybody from like 10 down was on softs, with exception of the Alpines that were on hards. So, how do you think that worked out for some of the teams?
Well, some of the thought process, like you've got, Aston Martin, and Aston Martin, I think they only had one hard and one medium tire. And so then they had to go with the soft at some point.
Right.
So they chose to go at the beginning with the soft tire. And Alonso hoping to get a quick start and be able to overtake a spot or two, right, while everybody's bunched together. That didn't work out for him. But, that's okay. So then,
he did extend his stint pretty far, though.
He did.
I think he went past 10 laps on that, on the sauce. But anyway,
which is actually pretty impressive because of the heat of the tarmac being that hot.
Exactly.
And the tire degradation on those tires is a lot, especially for the soft tire. But the back of the grid, so everybody from Ricciardo was at 11, everybody behind him was on soft. So right at the start, you see both Yuki and Ricciardo just getting passed.
Yeah.
I mean, there was nothing they could do. Yeah. They were just clearly slower. So one of the things that they do when they look at those tires and they kind of rate them, they'll talk about the tire being a certain amount of seconds or tenth or hundredth of a second slower or faster, whatever. But in this case, at the very start of the life of that new soft tire, it's about a second a lap faster. So it's much quicker right at the start.
Right.
So those guys like really were right on top of the RBs right away.
Right. And it takes a second to dial them in, right? Like the formation lap isn't going to do a whole lot to get them hot and ready to go. So it makes sense that it would take them just a little bit longer to get off the line. And you're right. And not only that, I think Yuki had just a bad start in general. So yeah, we saw what happened with Albon passing Yuki, and then what happened with his him connecting with Daniel later in turn 3. But that was kind of that was very unfortunate, obviously for both of those guys. But Ricciardo's going along, and it looked like he just never saw him. He's he kind of looks and sees like he's having what I think Stroll coming up on the left, and so he moves to the right, but he moves a lot to the right, probably way more than really what he should have. And then of course you've got Albon on his right, right on his blind spot,
and hits him, and they both go into the wall right off the bat, and they're done for the day.
Not good for either of them for sure. But
so lap 1 accident,
right, exactly. But
red flag,
and then we get back into the pits where we know they can do changes and things like that.
Which is actually kind of, it's kind of an interesting thing. Like, you go into qualifying, and then between qualifying and the start of the race, you can't make certain changes. But then when they go into the pits like this, under these circumstances, then they can. And so they had about 30 minutes where they were able to sit there and make these changes and adjustments. If you wanted, you could do your tire changes. If you so all of these different possibilities suddenly open up for them. Yeah,
definitely. We saw some of the teams actually bringing the car into the garage, which is pretty cool that they can do that.
Yeah,
you would think like they go in the garage, DNF, you're out. But
right.
In this case, not. And a lot of teams didn't actually change. I thought Alonso would have changed his tires then and there, and I don't believe he did.
No, he stayed on the softs for a little while.
Yeah, which was really interesting because then you had Norris, who was on mediums, and then instead of leaving him out, they bring him in early, right? And we know how that. We know what that did to his race.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird thing. They bring him in off of the mediums, put on hard tires, and he's right. He's racing well.
Yeah.
He's doing, he's in a good position. And then at somewhere around, what was it, lap 25, 27, somewhere in there, he's neck and neck with Leclerc, and they order him into box. They get on the radio and tell him to box, and he's like, "What?"
Yeah, way too early.
What we doing here? We
Yeah.
don't need to come. Basically, like his response tells me, hey, he still had more life on the tires.
Yeah, definitely.
And it tells me, hey, he could have kept going, but that's what they wanted him to do. That's what he does. The announcers were talking like, hey, well, we got to protect. Maybe they're protecting him against Russell coming around, or maybe with Leclerc because Leclerc was going to pit then. But
I think they were convinced Leclerc was going to pit
and he
late
did.
and then pit a second time, which
yeah.
didn't happen.
Yeah.
I think he was the only one to pull off a one stop race.
Yeah.
Which is really incredible. Not something you would normally see from a Ferrari to manage their tires, right?
Well, that was the goal in the off season, was to have better tire management out
Yeah.
of their car, and it looks like they're doing that because I mean, this is like we said, tough tarmac on tires.
Yeah.
It's hot out there
Yeah.
at the tarmac level, and he did a one-stop race. I mean, just did mediums all the way, and then he went like 29, 30 laps, I think.
Yeah. Just like smack in the middle of the race, and then went hards the rest of the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
and Norris had to pit one more time, so he was on those tires for like, I don't know, 15 laps, something like that. But he still had a long time on the other hards. But it ended up hurting him later because he couldn't do anything.
Yeah, and just made him work extra hard. I mean, what's another pit stop? That was, I think, 22 seconds, thereabout. So he had to do basically an extra pit stop that was more or less unnecessary, I think. Yeah, considering where he started and where he ended. Definitely the loser there. Started in third, ended in fifth. Yeah, and then you see Leclerc having a horrible quali, starting eighth, couldn't figure it out, and then managed his tires to fourth. Yeah, that's it's like a Sergio Perez move there. The
driver of the day.
Yeah, but the Mercedes Hamilton had really sounds like a pretty terrible day. We were talking about how he was letting his teammate through and things like that, but he wasn't happy. He was complaining about having to start on the worst tires that they had, which were the hards and mediums. Yeah, again, kind of different from the rest of the field. Hards, and then mediums.
Yeah, it seemed like the medium, like from what he was saying, it sounded like the mediums worked a little bit better for him.
Exactly.
I heard Toto talking afterward about the analysis and the data that they got from the race, and he kind of commented something along the lines of, "Hey, the race results aren't where we wanted them to be, but we got a whole lot of good data that indicates that we're going in the right direction and that we know what next steps need to happen." Yeah. So if he's right, that's really good for them because they're basically, obviously Red Bull, Ferrari, top two teams, and then you've got McLaren, Aston Martin, at least half of them, and then you've got the Mercedes right on their heels. Yeah. So I mean, that if Toto's correct, that's good for them.
Yeah. No, that's good. And, apparently Toto wasn't even supposed to be there in Japan. He was going to take the week off to work on the car, but I guess he was motivating and figuring out what's happening with that car. So
that is kind of interesting. They have a certain amount of races, and their team director, CEO is not going to. Their team principal is not going to be there at one of the races. Okay,
unusual.
Hey, different. Yeah, different people do things differently. So whatever works for them. But
how did you feel about Ferrari?
I feel a lot of things about Ferrari.
Yeah.
but one of the things, so a couple of things, and this is not what you were asking for, I'm sure. But I really liked the shots in the crowd of the Ferrari fans.
Yes,
and seeing some of the hats. Like there was one where they're like what do you call them? The four horsemen.
Yeah,
they're like red horses. Like these hats with it's basically like a horse's head on top of their head.
And they had like samurai outfits as well.
Yeah, they had some of that. They had all sorts of things that were out there.
I think that was the takeaway of the race was the fans.
Yeah,
they were representing. They had like little teddy bears, like anime teddy bears, and everybody had the little like little fans that they were waving every time Yuki would like go on on one of their turns. You see the little hands. Yeah,
but they had like all sorts of things, like handmade things with Yuki and his face on them, and they had like other types of hats, like actual race cars that are like, like this big, sitting on top of people's heads, with the wheels hanging way out, and everything. They had that. It was really interesting. I had never, they always do shots of the crowd and everything, and maybe I just missed it, but I had never noticed that much. It seemed like interaction on a grander scale than what most people do, which is always fun to me. I've never been the person that paints their face or paints their body and goes to a sporting event. Maybe where, the jersey or something that coincides with that team to support it, team color or something along those lines. But
it was everything.
But it was all over. Yeah, it was all sorts and all over the place. It was great.
You could see the shots of like
they're
the
all
families.
like super happy.
Yeah, they're all super happy. Exactly.
Too,
It was like an Aston Martin, a Red Bull, and a Ferrari fan, like a little family of like everybody.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, that's great.
Yeah,
but. Yeah, they definitely had fun. I think that was pretty cool.
Yeah. So your question, I think, was let's go back to that.
So
originally with Ferrari and what I thought of Ferrari.
So what do you think about their race? Like, and we'll get more into the drivers and themselves, but like, how do you see them in terms of like where they are in the championship and what they're doing?
Well, I mean, statistically in the championship, they're in third and fourth place. Second place as a team. Obviously, they're doing really good. And it's close. But they've been scoring in every race, which is great. It is kind of interesting because you've got Leclerc, who's basically their number one driver, but yet you've got Sainz that's winning it all. It seems like every week he's on the podium that he's raced. So this week, he's on the podium again. His car looked better. He drove it better, and they, had him, pass Leclerc, and I think he deserved that too. I think I'm not sure if they let him pass. I think they both kind of fought for position, but he was clearly the better car, better driver, and he's doing a great job. And I think it's really interesting. Now, with that said, Leclerc during qualifying was not good.
Yeah.
And normally Leclerc is an excellent qualifier. He's one of the best. I mean, you could say maybe that he's one of the best of all time in qualifying. You could. I'm not sure if I would.
I was going to say
you could if you wanted
he's
to.
One of the
probably
best.
Make an argument.
He's one of the best qualifying.
Yes.
Like qualifying poles, but not converting to wins.
You could say
so
that
he does.
too.
So he does. He's got a good one lap pace, but when it comes to the race, he kind of seems to kind of have a little downturn.
He always has like something that seems like kind of goes off in the wrong way for him. But today he has, he one stop race, and does a great job. Driver of the day, comes in fourth place, doesn't get the podium, but Leclerc's in great. I mean, that was a great race.
Yeah,
started off eighth, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you've got Sainz doing what Sainz does, smooth operator all the way.
Yeah.
Gets to get up there on the podium and celebrate.
Yeah.
So, it makes Fred very happy. You get to see Fred standing down below, smiling like a little kid. I like Fred's persona on camera, at least. I like him. So I think Ferrari's in a very good place. Yeah. Clearly, it's like a race between them and Red Bull. I do think Red Bull is a superior car and team at this point, but
for sure.
But Ferrari, I think, has made clear steps that are bringing them closer. And each week, Red Bull is going to have to defend.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
I think
agree, disagree.
Tell me. I don't totally agree. I think yes, the threat of a Ferrari there is going to force Red Bull to continue to develop the car and to not lose focus. And it's hard to lose focus when you have a Max Verstappen on your team. Like, the guy himself is going to push whether they're 10 seconds or 1 minute out in front of the competition, right? So, I'm not totally concerned about that. What it does tell me, though, their form right now, and Fred and the drivers, even the ones that are leaving, even Sainz, which is, as you said, having a renaissance.
Yes. It's having a renaissance of sorts.
But even with that, what it does do is it establishes, at least this race showed me, that they're better than McLaren. And that's really who I think they're competing with is like, are they the number 2 or are they the number 3? McLaren
That's a
looked
point.
good, right? McLaren looked good in qualifying, but you see they have one a lapse in like strategy and also a little bit lapse in just pace in general, right?
Yeah. That's very true. That's a good point there.
Yeah.
Like when you're,
And we've known for a long time that one of the strengths of Ferrari is they're really quick in slow corners, slow turns, right? And this was, I think, a test for them because of like the tire degradation and the fact that they're not they've never really been balanced. You know, they don't have a tremendous amount of pace, but they're still able to go quick in the corners. And this showed that they were able to do that in high speed corners, you know, because this isn't just like slow. It's not slow. So, and with McLaren, they're mostly a balanced car, right? They don't go necessarily fast, but they're definitely not slow. And so they're like kind of the in between, you know, where you have Red Bull and they're quick on the straights, but slow on the corners. Ferrari, you know, quick in the corners, on slow corners, but not, you know, somewhere in the middle on the straights. Then you have the McLaren, which is balanced. You know, they're good kind of everywhere. But this kind of showed that I don't think that's the case anymore. I think Ferrari is kind of taken on that, like they're kind of good everywhere, and fixing their tire degradation and whatever the upgrades they did to their car over the winter definitely showed that. I think they're just like set number 2 team, and with Sainz driving the way he's driving, it's you know, it kind of begs the question: did Ferrari make a mistake?
Yeah, and to answer your question is a difficult thing to answer, really, because how are you looking at it? Are you looking at it, and one, because the mistake of letting, you know, or signing Hamilton, so Sainz is going to be going. You know, right now we don't know because we're in the 24 season and Hamilton doesn't come over till 25. So that's a little bit of a difficult thing to say. But right now, I mean, Sainz is driving better than Leclerc. If Leclerc was doing better and it was clearly way better, then it makes it easier, like an easier argument. But right now, Sainz he's winning races. He's on the podium every time that he's raced, and he seems like he has this understanding of the car, a very good understanding. Like when Leclerc was talking after qualifying, he commented he didn't have a good understanding of what was going on with the car. Now, somewhere in between then and the race, he got a better understanding of the car, right? But because like Sainz is doing so well, it's easy to go, man, this is not a good decision for Hamilton. And you see Hamilton, you know, and Mercedes car is not as competitive. Hamilton's not driving as well. Maybe some of that, maybe it's some situations where he's just like, man, do I really need to push it around this corner?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
For, you know, 9th, 10th place. Why? I'm you know, I want to be alive for next year. I want to be, you know, doing well going. So maybe there's a little bit of like that's going on with Hamilton, but from a financial perspective, I think from a race perspective, I think Sainz is going to be a better driver next year and would be if he stayed with Ferrari than what Hamilton would be if Hamilton came over.
Yeah.
That's my own opinion. Hamilton's still a great driver. Hamilton's going to be great wherever he goes. But, you know, as far as the drive side goes, how many more years does Hamilton have driving? I don't know that. The other thing is when you look at these deals and look at this is a big financial thing.
Yeah.
And financially, it makes a lot of sense for Ferrari to get Hamilton. It makes financial sense for any team, basically, to get Hamilton on board.
Right.
He's the most popular. Well, he and Verstappen are the most popular drivers. Like, you look online, they're going to be the ones that everybody's looking for.
Right.
If you talk to somebody that doesn't know anything about F1, they've probably heard of Hamilton.
Yeah.
And I mean, little kids, grown adults, whatever. He's, he does a lot of positive things out there in the world.
He's a skin on Fortnite.
Yes. I mean, he's pretty popular. Like people really like him, right? So,
Sorry.
So he's out there, and so financially, it makes a lot of sense for them. You're probably going to up all of your sales, any type of ticket sales, any type of membership, any type of sponsorship. You're probably able to pull in more from that. You're probably going to have more merchandise sales from it, way more than you probably ever would with Carlos Sainz.
Right.
Even if he does great all season long, because Hamilton, like
he was a brand.
He was a brand.
Yeah.
I mean, he literally is. He used to be considered the greatest of all time, and maybe he's still. Maybe 10 years from now, we'll look back and go, yeah, he was.
Well, he might still be in the sport 10 years from now.
He very well could be, and if he is, then maybe Ferrari does. Would have made the right decision.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, who knows how long he's going to, like you said, who knows how long he's going to race. Like, even when he was at Mercedes, when the new regulations came out, there were already talks about him retiring. So, at Ferrari, he's going to have a whole new challenge, a challenge that both of these drivers currently at Ferrari have had. Sainz had it last year, right? He started the year, couldn't really do much with the car, couldn't understand it. We're seeing basically that mirror image today with Leclerc, right? And now Sainz understands the car where Leclerc kind of doesn't. And, who's to say that next year Sainz wouldn't be the best driver probably on the grid aside from Verstappen?
Right. It's very possible.
So, yeah. And now, we're not going to see that, which is kind of unfortunate because anywhere he goes, unless it's a Red Bull, it's not going to develop into anything really, unless like best of the rest, right? A McLaren or a Aston Martin or an Audi if they show something positive. But I agree, it is a financial thing, and it makes sense for that. But at the same time, it's Ferrari. They are already one of the most popular brands on earth.
But they're a popular brand for a reason, and popular brands do things that continue their popularity.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true.
They're successful for a reason because they know how to do it. They know how to be successful.
Yeah.
Success breeds success. What other phrases can I use? Catchphrases. Yeah.
Well, you're not wrong, Craig. And
that's correct.
But but I like the idea of just this. And he's not an underdog. Like he's a good driver, and it's a shame to have to see him drive somewhere where he won't be able to show that.
You never
signs.
know. I mean, you never know. Those signs may, he's going to get one of the top positions that's opened up if he wants it.
Yeah.
So if he wants that, you're going to have a spot at Mercedes that's opening up.
Yeah.
There's always speculation about who's going to go there or not.
Yeah.
Mercedes is a good place to go.
Yeah.
But you don't know how they're going to be. They've been talking for years that they're going to keep getting better and better, and they really haven't. It's going to be kind of Russell's team. Does he want that? Red Bull, if Perez decides that he's not going to be around, there's always talk about that. But
you're right.
To see where he'll end up, but I think he'll have kind of first pick.
I think it's going to happen soon.
Verstappen decides to break his contract.
I think that's what everybody's waiting for.
Yeah.
That's why there's no movement right now, because I think everybody's waiting for Mercedes and Toto to figure out what Verstappen's going to do. Is he going to make the jump? Is he going to stay? And then we'll see all the pieces kind of align.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we saw Helmut Marko was mentioning that it's hard to ignore Sainz right now. Like you said, he's he's batting 100% every time he shows up. He's on the podium. Aside from the Red Bulls last year, who won?
Yeah,
Carlos Sainz, right?
Right.
So, I think he's in consideration for Red Bull. If depending on what happens with Perez, it wouldn't really make much sense for Perez to go anywhere.
Yeah,
and it really wouldn't make much sense for Red Bull to drop Perez, considering Perez is just steady Eddie doing it week in, week out, and pulling in those 1-2s. So, yeah, I'd like to see him. I think you're right. I think I'd like to see him in Mercedes. He'd be good there, and I think he'd give Russell a run for his money. I think Russell's kind of punching above his weight there right now, and I don't think,
maybe
he's got one of the top people in the sport, right? He's got Hamilton as his top competitor, but Hamilton unfortunately hasn't been able to figure it out with this car. But I don't think that's like a true measure of like, oh, Russell's that good. I just don't see it.
Yeah.
He's good. He's aggressive, but I think he'd have a hard time with an equally aggressive Carlos Sainz, especially if Carlos Sainz is driving the way he's been driving, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But it'd be interesting to see. A Sainz Red Bull reunion would be pretty cool, but I'm a Perez fan, so I'd hate to see him unless he's partnering with Perez, in which case that's cool.
That's another option,
Yeah. Speaking of the Mercedes, we saw, and even Russell, right? We saw his battles with Piastri, and we were talking about how McLaren really hasn't been showing up, or is kind of dropping it on the strategy portion of things, right? What did you think with him and Piastri during the race here in Suzuka?
I found that pretty intriguing because you've got, going back to Australia, you've got Russell battling Alonso for the last few laps, trying to pass Alonso. And of course you have the big shunt that happens and doesn't pass, doesn't finish. So no points at all for him. So today, this is redemption time. He comes back. He's I think 0.5 of a second behind Piastri with about like 3 laps to go.
Yeah.
Piastri's 0.5 of a second behind Alonso. So I'm immediately thinking, oh man, please pass Piastri right now so we can have this exact same scenario
drama
again to see what Alonso does. Because they're close, right?
Yeah.
It could happen. This is great. So I'm like on the edge of my seat.
And crash again.
Yeah.
No, don't.
I didn't say that. So, but drama, yes. But so I'm looking at that and I'm going, okay, is he going to do it? Is he going to be able to pass him because he's kind of got the pace? Maybe he is.
Right.
And he pushes it, and it's on one of the last couple of turns, the little chicane, and he has the window there to pass. Like Piastri gets over to the left, Russell moves to the right, starts trying to pass. They come up, and he's just not quite there. And it looks like they touch the wheel just barely. Yeah. If not, then man, you could drop maybe a piece of paper in between their wheels. It was close. Piastri goes off to the left, off the track. Russell stays on the track. Piastri comes back. They stay in that order with Piastri in front of Russell at that point. And then they get to the finish line of that lap, and Russell passes Piastri, and so then I'm like, okay, maybe this is gonna happen. But wasn't able to get back to Alonso to attempt an overtake at that point. But
wasn't enough time for sure.
Yeah,
it was the last lap.
Yeah, it was the last lap. So it was cool that he was able to do that. It was also cool, like when you're competing, whatever it is, whether it's cards, whether it's whatever, video games, sports, whatever you compete in, right? If there's a situation where there's kind of a traumatic oops that happens, or a traumatic thing that's like, potential confidence shaker, usually you don't get back into that situation right away. You may try to get back in it, but like it doesn't align like that, like it did with Russell today, where he's back in the race. It gets to the very end. He has somebody that he has got to pass, and so all of these things, there's all these curves and tight curves. So he literally gets to get back and almost get back in that same position with the same person in front of him with Alonso. So that's pretty cool because it never happens like that.
A little deja vu for him.
Yeah,
for sure.
pretty much. But it was good. It worked out well for him. He was able to pass Piastri. He wasn't able to get back to Alonso, but that's okay because he basically got back in the situation, showed that, hey, yeah, I had some bad stuff happen the week before, but I'm back.
Yeah.
You know, this isn't going to hold me back, which is cool. That's a good sign. Good for him.
Yeah, he did good considering he started. Yeah, bravo indeed. Considering he started 9th and ended 7th, that wasn't very bad at all. So
Yeah,
good on him. Alonso did good as well. I mean, he held off Piastri for quite a while. It seems like that's the story. Piastri just kind of always behind somebody for like the whole race.
Yeah, it kind of has been that way.
I wonder if he's just posting right behind them and just coasts.
I think like on his Instagram page after one of the races, he was behind Hamilton. And so on his Instagram page, he just had all these posts of the rear end of Hamilton's car. But it's, he's definitely kind of had that. I mean, some of that's just his car's good, but it's not quite good enough to pass. But then some of it's like, some of it obviously is a little bit him too.
Yeah,
he has responsibility for that as well.
Right.
But yeah, that's kind of an interesting thing there. But once again, you've got Alonso, the wily veteran, holding people off, doing what he does best
for quite a while,
which is actually really cool. Like you look at him, like he knows how to drive. He's taken a car basically that's it's an all right car. It's it's one of the top teams, but it's not good enough to really get him on the podium. But every week he's competing, every week he's fighting, every week he's like holding off somebody that maybe has a little bit better pace than him, but he's figuring out ways to make things happen.
Yeah,
it's always pretty cool watching him race.
When you compare him to his teammate, yeah, definitely.
That even more so. It even makes it even seem more impressive what he's doing. I mean, you had Stroll starting, had bad qualifying, started like 16th or something like that. I think he moved up to like what, 12th to end of the day. So
compared to 6th for Alonso,
yeah,
I mean but that's a consistent story throughout the whole year so far. So
right.
You have one guy up here, one guy down here, but when dad owns the team, it's okay. Like it's not a problem.
Yeah, I mean, but hey, whatever you got to do to be an F1 driver,
yeah.
I think if I was,
he seems like
my dad owned the team, and I wanted to drive, and he let me drive, and I could compete a little bit. Hey, great, but
yeah. Well, he leads us to the bottom of the field. Perfect segue.
Yes.
Thank you, Stroll.
Yes.
The Alpines. They're not really. I mean, they're still kind of going backwards, but it seems like Ocon is okay.
Yes, he is. That's great.
Okay with it.
It's very punny of you. Yeah, he is. He's like what in qualifying, he got into the second round of qualifying, and he was like cheering like nuts, going crazy, and super happy over it. You would think that he had won the whole race. Yeah. It was more cheering and more joy on that audio than what you hear for like Verstappen and Perez and Sainz, like podium.
I really thought it was
podium.
I was curious for a second, and I brought this up to you earlier. I was like, is it sarcasm? Like, I just can't tell, but I really think it might be a genuine thing. And
I think it's genuine. I mean, I don't know. I don't know the guy.
It is progress.
He is kind of known for a little sarcasm here or there, but I think it's genuine because that team was slow.
Yeah.
And they still kind of are, but they really, really obviously worst on the field. And they used to not be, they were more middle of the pack.
Yeah.
Thought that they were going to be competing to be in the top 10 every week. And here they are hey, who's going to be last? Is it going to be, which driver on Alpine is going to be last?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could throw Sauber in there too, but cause
or Williams.
Yeah, you could. Yeah. You could make a case for that too.
if they brought two cars, Alpine. They brought some upgrades to their front wing, right? So it looks like it helped them a little bit because they did better than last.
It's hard to say. Like in qualifying, like this is a weird thing. So in qualifying, he gets like in the top 15, and on his last lap of qualifying, he was the only person that the time was worse than his previous time that was taken. So it's like, okay, well, I mean, and it was marginally. It wasn't like it was seconds or something. It was like 100th or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 seconds, somewhere in there. But yeah, it was a little bit slower. But
yeah. What about the RBs?
The RBs, yes, the good old RBs. They, they did much better this week.
Yeah.
Yuki coming back to his home circuit.
Yeah.
I was excited to see that. And it was pretty cool. Everybody cheering for him. And
his parents were there.
Yeah, his parents were there. And so that was really cool. But also, like, he's the first Japanese-born racer to score points there since, like, the early 2000s.
Yeah, since Kobayashi.
Yes, Kobayashi. Yeah. And so that's an awesome thing for him. And I think he drove really well. He started at 10th, finished at 10th. But with that being said, like, he had some great passes.
Yeah.
There were times where he dropped back a little bit, due to some, different scenarios happening out there. But he had some really good racing that he did, and his team did as well. I thought, outside of Ricardo, unfortunately having the accident right at the first, being out for the race, but Ricardo was in position. I mean, he started as 12th, right behind Yuki, or 11th, right behind Yuki. So that's good. But Yuki had a really good pit stop at one point. I think there were 4, maybe 5 different cars that came in at the same time. He was came in right behind the Williams. Took off, had a super fast pit stop, got out of the pit first, and took a few different places.
Yeah, took a couple places for sure.
And then he also had some passes on the S curves, which are pretty difficult to pass on.
Yes.
And so that was
on the outside
impressive.
of the curves too.
Yeah, on the outside. It was pretty impressive. It was kind of like watching a video game,
Exactly.
You get to a certain spot and you're like, I can do this. And
Yeah.
just whips right around these guys and they're just
like, what? Yeah. Wrong line, wrong
racing
line. Yeah. No, he did it. And he did it in front of his home crowd, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
And it's points. So like you can't go wrong with getting some points, especially, you start tallying them up, and it's good. He's beating his teammate again. It's rough. It's rough.
He's
it's rough when
a better driver right now than Ricardo.
Yeah, than Ricardo. I feel for him.
Yeah.
Did you see his post race interviews? He looks sad.
Oh, Ricardo,
he's so upset that he couldn't. He's like, I've got all this energy. You go through the whole weekend, first lap. It's the worst thing that can happen because you got all this energy, and then you've got the guy who's probably going to replace you right behind you.
Yeah.
Like literally hovering 2 feet away from you.
Yeah, years ago, I was on a cycling race, and right out the bat, like we take off, and I hit something, and my rear tire flats.
Oh no!
And so I had the spare tire, but for some reason, like the pump had fallen off of my bike as well, so I didn't have a pump, and everybody had already like gone on, so I was done for the day, like literally like within minutes. And we had driven all this way across the state to go drive. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. And just having to wait while everybody else races. And I definitely feel for him. That's an awful feeling to have. It looks like he kind of caused the accident too. I mean,
it was a racing incident for sure.
He could have.
If he would have turned his head in the right direction to look at his mirror, the right one, literally the right one, he would have seen him. Albon was kind of on his blind spot. It happens.
Yeah.
But very unfortunate to the people it happened to. We know Williams can't afford another trash. They can't. I mean, they can't even afford another chassis. So
Yeah, I know. I mean, they were supposed to have that third chassis. And
yeah,
so, who knows? The one that Albon that he wrecked.
I-
Is it okay for racing this next week? That's definitely a question. Or not this next week because it's going to be a couple of weeks before they race. So
it's
is it going to be okay? I don't know.
It can't get worse for them. You have Sargent going airborne and doing some twisties in the midair, touching the wall, getting
in practice.
practice out of all things, and then you have Albon again into the tire wall with damage all across the body of that car. So, and it probably new floor. Who knows what's going to go on with that?
Yeah, because
they don't even have parts. I mean, it's just crazy.
It's like every week they're wrecking, and when you do that, like you use up all of your money for these upgrades on just fixing replacement parts.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty big challenge. So you've had like Sargent driving the car that Albon's, with that he messed up the chassis on, and so then Albon's driving Sargent's car, has a bad shunt with that. So then Sargent's driving, and then later on in the race, he did okay. He was able to move up and down a little bit, but on that pit stop I was telling you about where Sonoda did great, they didn't have that great of a pit stop. It wasn't super slow, but it was slow enough to where he came out and he ended up being behind a couple of other people, and he was never able to overtake them at that point. And then at some point he spins out. He's fortunate he was able to back out onto the tarmac and take off again, and finish the race. But he was in basically last place. Last place of the cars, 16th place. They had a few others that didn't finish. So yeah.
Well, you have a couple of teams still without scoring points. Quite
Yeah.
interesting. You've got the Alpines, the Sauber, and the Williams.
My favorite. The Williams, my favorite at the back.
Your favorite, yes, exactly. Yes. And even Sauber did a little bit better. I mean, progress.
Yeah,
4-second pit stops are better than 20-second pit stops.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, previously the pit stops basically eliminated Bottas from even being able to compete. And at least this time he was able to compete. Yeah, or Zhou. Yeah. Zhou, of course, he had his gearbox go out, so that retired him. But it looked like their car is moving in a positive direction at this point in the development of the vehicle, and Bottas seems like he was driving it a lot better.
Yeah,
which they had some of their side pod. It looks like a lot of the adjustments that they're doing, the upgrades that they're doing, are similar to the RB19. So they're catching up.
Yeah,
they're not there.
Yeah,
but they're moving in a hopefully good direction.
Yeah,
hopefully
good direction,
we'll see some positive things with them. But
and next 2 weeks from now, we're gonna be going to China.
Yes,
Shanghai. We haven't been there for a while.
I know. The last time it was 2019, Lewis Hamilton won there.
Yeah.
So COVID hit, and so they were contracted to be there through 23, but because of COVID, they have not had a race. So we're back this year. And so the China circuit's a pretty cool one. If you
Tell us about it.
Well, I'm glad that you asked. So the China circuit is pretty cool looking. Like if you look at it,
what's it look like?
Well, we'll get to that. So it's known for some challenging corners. In the first two corners, it's just very challenging, and it's challenging because it kind of curves. And then kind of curves all the way back as a 270-degree turn. And that in and of itself is a lot. Most tracks don't have anything like that. The curve itself, like if you look at the track, and you can envision an animal with long ears, like a bunny, since this is close to that time of spring when there's Easter egg hunts and so forth, we'll go with the bunny. And one of the ears is kind of, is like a normal bunny ear that stands up.
Right.
And then the other ear is like flopped over, because you got to have a cute bunny that has a flopped over ear.
Of course.
And it kind of makes that curve like that makes
of
like
the curved ear.
Of a curved ear.
Yeah.
Yes. And then it goes on and you go up the other ear and go back down through the face and nose and back around. It has a little arm sticking out. Yeah, and then like a long straightaway. Yeah. So it's a pretty cool looking track from above. You can get imaginative with it. Find your favorite animal. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yes.
Who do you have?
Unfortunately, I don't remember the Chinese zodiac animal for the year right now.
It's
Or I
the
would
year of the
mention
dragon. Come
the year
on.
of the dragon.
We probably can't make a dragon off of that.
It
one,
doesn't
but
look like a
no.
dragon. No, it looks, yeah. It has to be an ear, like
Yeah.
standard
Gotcha.
snout and so forth, possibly. Yeah,
Right.
not really dragon-esque. It's unfortunate. That would be kind of a cool design to go off of when you're thinking about tracks. But
Well,
yeah, so you've got that coming up. That's going to be pretty cool.
yeah, that's pretty awesome. You know, we should talk about our predictions. I will mention, I mean, I don't want to mention, but I will say that last week I did predict Verstappen,
Yes, you did.
Perez, Sainz, and I'm going to go
In
with
that
that
order.
again in that order. So,
yes.
you know,
Well
I
done.
just-
Well done,
you know,
Daniel.
it's,
I did not. I did get two.
just
out
in
of the
case
three.
you were curious if my predictions came out, but they did.
You did very well on your
And
predictions.
I'm going to replicate these predictions for this following race. So I think it's going to be Verstappen, Perez, and we're going to see Sainz again. I think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I definitely think that Verstappen's going to win.
Yeah.
And I think Perez will be right there with
Mm.
him because that's how they roll. And then you've got Ferrari. So just for fun, I'm going to say Leclerc.
Okay.
But you're probably right with Sainz, which is somewhat of a cop-out for me to say on a prediction, but that's how it is.
You just don't want to agree with me, Craig.
Well, it makes it a little bit more fun that way. If Leclerc does win, then I can say, I predicted
Yeah.
over 2 weeks prior to the race.
Well, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a great race, and I look forward to seeing it again.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be
Yeah.
more upgrades, I'm sure. And hopefully, like we're going to see how Williams bounces back. Yeah, I know everybody out there is really searching for that diligently.
Right.
But but I think that Mercedes, that's going to be a big one too to see how they do. If Toto is right on what he's saying, how close are they to being more competitive? Can they actually push McLaren out of the way a little bit?
No.
Possibly threaten Ferrari? That'll be interesting to see. How is Russell going to do? Is Alonso still going to be like, nope, guys,
Yeah.
you guys stay behind me. I'm still better than you guys. How's that going to play out? That's going to be fun to see. McLaren, if they get any updates, man, I don't know. There's all sorts of things that we're going to be paying attention to
Yeah.
over the next couple of weeks leading up to the race.
Yeah, let's hope it's not just wishful thinking from Toto. I really want to see
I
them
do too.
actually.
I do too.
They might just be saving all their energy for the next car, though. Who knows? Like, it's early on, it's
A
early
little
days,
bit.
but
Yeah, but I
I
mean,
mean-
they're going to have. I mean, the next car is 26, so
yeah.
you want to get
Yeah.
this caught up right this year. So because otherwise, like you're probably going to be locked in 25. You're not going to want to spend as much in 25
Right.
if you got to spend it the next year. But
That's true.
yeah,
All right. Well, it's time for
time
us
that we
to
say our goodbyes.
it's time for us to
to
say
our
goodbye.
audience.
Exactly.
Which
So
we appreciate you listening
we do appreciate you listening. We thank
or
you.
watching.
And on your specific platform,
Yes,
please follow us, like, comment, subscribe, and
you know what to do on your platform.
exactly.
Hopefully,
And we'll probably see you next week.
yes. Sounds good, guys.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you, Daniel. Bye-bye.